Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. I wanted to make a little bit of a public service announcement about the schedule. Okay, that's not the right mic, hold on. Okay, I'll use this shorter leash until the other mics get. Okay, so a quick announcement about. Oh, it's back. Okay. All right. So we'll take our next break at about 12:45 or so, and we'll go until 1:45. Long break. That'll include salat, and before salat, you guys can have lunch too. The stand guy is outside. And from what I remember last time, it was pretty awesome. Okay. The entire plane was smelling when I was flying back. They knew there's a Muslim on the plane. Okay, so it's either solid or some of that other stuff. Anyhow. So we're on to the next ayah. Ash-shamsu wal-qamaru bi-husban. There's a switch that's happened. Allah was talking about the Quran, and all of a sudden He starts talking about the sun and the moon following a precise calendar. The sun and the moon, they follow a precise calendar or a precise schedule. Let's first understand this transition. I told you, disbelievers in this surah particularly said we will only believe when we see. Allah says there's plenty for you to see. The Quran is just the most amazing ayat, but you've had ayat way before them too. They were all around you all along. The idea in the Quran, the wisdom of the Quran, I don't like to use the word philosophy, but the wisdom in the Quran essentially is, the idea is, that there are two kinds of ayat. There are two kinds of things or teachings that lead you to God. There's revelation, but it's also creation all around you if you really think about it. There are people who pass through life without thinking about what's around them. And there are people who actually seriously look at what's around them and actually engage in deep thought. And for the ones who do, it's enough for them to know there's someone out there. This is not created without a purpose. That's actually described in detail in Surah Al-Imran, in the 3rd surah. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. The creation of the skies and the earth, the conflict of night and day, they're also ayat. There are also miraculous signs for people who have sound minds, really deep intellect. They can look at this stuff and say, this can't be an accident. This is way too profound, way too intricate. I am not a science guy at all. Worst subject in school, and I start like having convulsions when people talk about science and stuff. Not a science guy, okay? But I have some very close friends that are really big science people. Like I have a couple that lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, or Clifton, Ohio. They're both PhDs in science. They're both husband and wife. They're both Hafadh of Quran, and they're both PhDs in science. And every time I go to Ohio, they sit me down to give me a science lesson. Okay? And this last science lesson they gave me was so awesome, even though I didn't understand most of it. It was so awesome. Because they're both studying genetics. Right? And how human genes are formed, the genome sequence, etc., etc. And they were talking about how there's, for one gene, you know how they're trying to clone genes and reproduce genes or whatever in the lab? For one gene in the human sequence, there are billions upon billions upon billions of combinations that are wrong. And there's one that's right. And that's one gene for the color of one skin cell. So if they try to recreate that in a lab, they literally have to test it endless amounts of times before they get even close. There's a random accidental chance they might get close. And for all of our genes to be sequenced and all of our architecture inside of us to be so perfectly laid out, the chances of it are statistically zero. Not even 0.0001. Any statistician will tell you that's impossible. That it's not designed. It's not perfectly organized. SubhanAllah. But I don't know how you can study genetics. They were telling me, I don't know how anybody can study genetics and not believe there's an architect behind this. Because when we try to design, when we try to reconstruct the architecture of the genetics, we're at a loss. It's way too intricate, way too powerful, subhanAllah. So now, let's come to these ayat themselves. You're denying the ayat of revelation. The idea is you've been denying the ayat of creation all along. We are at a time of great opportunity. I'm not a science guy, but the world is. We're at a time of a great opportunity. Are there advances being made in science? It seems as though today science is at a war with religion, isn't it? Either you're a believer in science or you're a believer in religion. The Quran is painting a different picture. The Quran is saying if we truly study science, and if we really discover this universe and ourselves, then if we're sincere, that study itself will lead us to the truth. That study itself will, because we're studying the ayat, aren't you? When you're studying science, you're studying creation. And creation is nothing but ayat. Somebody studying the Quran is studying ayat. And somebody studying physics is also studying ayat. They're studying ayat too. And if these ayat lead you to guidance, those ayat can also lead you to guidance. They can lead you to the truth also. Another friend of mine, interestingly enough, from North Carolina, a really close friend, he's a PhD in the philosophy of science. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And a Muslim guy. And you know what he studied? He studied the religious beliefs of the major scientists of the European Enlightenment era and then there onwards. And how pretty much all of the major scientists of the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century were all strong believers in God. They had a problem with Trinity and ideas of shirk because their scientific beliefs didn't coincide with a God that would have any creation-like attributes. Newton wrote papers on how God is one. Newton has written papers on God being one. Several, not one. And how it doesn't make any sense that he'd have a son. Amazing stuff. Anyhow, that's a sidetrack. Here though, Allah says the sun and the moon follow a very precise calendar. They follow a very precise schedule. You have to pay attention to two things here. The first of them is something to do with manufacturing. You guys know nowadays we're living in the age of brand names, right? When you see a car drive down the road, a nice car, you can tell from a different distance, oh, that's a BMW. That's a Mercedes. That's a Lexus. Oh, that's a Mercedes too. No, wait, that's a Hyundai. They copy everyone. Yeah. Right? You can tell from afar what kind of car it is. You can tell the manufacturer because they have a certain signature design. People that study art can look at a painting and say, this artist, it's this artist painting. He's influenced by these styles, or etc. People that are into design can look at an outfit and say, that's that brand. That's that brand name. People that are into gadgets can look at a laptop from afar and say, that's a Mac. Oh, that's an iPhone. That's an iPad. That's an i8. Right? You can tell from afar. Okay? So, every manufacturer, everyone who designs something has a particular signature, a particular style. Allah also manufactures or no? He does. And Allah also has a particular style. There's a style He likes to incorporate in the things that He creates. And when He talks about His creation, He gives us clues about what He likes in His creation. What He likes to add as a signature in His creation. When He talks about the sun and the moon, He argues that He likes for them to have a very precise calendar. Precision. They should follow a very particular schedule. Does Allah like the human being to follow a particular schedule too? He does, doesn't He? What is in our calendar as Muslims that is precise just like the sun and the moon are precise? Salat is precise according to the precise position of the sun. Fasting is precise according to the precise position of the moon. SubhanAllah. The sun and the moon are a precise calendar. It's like, you know how you hang a clock or a calendar on your wall? Allah took the ceiling of ours and put a calendar on it, a clock on it, the sun and the moon. And we just follow our schedules according to theirs. The two major calendars in the world, the solar and the lunar. But there's something even more heavy going on here that gets overlooked. Some of us have talked about it, but it doesn't make its way to popular literature in English. The Arabic word is husban. Husban means two things. It's the hyperbole of calculation from hisab. It also means destruction. It also means or something that will destruct at a very particular time, like a time bomb, right? It's ticking down and then it blows up. Husban is a timely destruction. And in that meaning, it's also used in the Quran. Anybody know the story of the two gardeners in Surah Al-Kahf?
No.
Right? In that story, two gardeners are arguing and one of them says, أَوْ يُرْسِلَ عَلَيْهَا حُسْبَانًا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Allah might send a timely destruction from the sky. Allah might send destruction on your garden that's on a very precise time. The use of the word husban means destruction that will come at a very precise time. That opens up a new door of understanding in the surah. What is that? The sun and the moon are about to be destroyed. It's about time that they finish their cycles. It's about time that they come to an end. Basically, Judgment Day. Why mention Judgment Day right after he mentions he created the human being? We talked about Quran. Quran is the greatest sign of Judgment Day. The coming of the Quran, the coming of the final messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's one and the same thing. The coming of the final word, the only major event left is what now? The sun and the moon crashing into each other, being destroyed. That's the only major event left. It is as though Allah is now saying to the disbeliever, you will only believe when you see, well, the only real thing to see left now is what? The end. That's the only real thing left to see. SubhanAllah. الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ بِحُسْبَانٍ. Now, if you keep the ayat, or the interpretation in line with that particular interpretation, then you would read, وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. The stars and the tree are both going to be doing what? What's sajda? Prostrating? Bowing down, falling down. When Judgment Day happens, does Allah describe stars falling? Falling as though they're falling into sajda. Trees, by the way, interesting comment by Alusi Rahmah. He says, to the Arabs there were two symbols of beauty. One symbol of beauty at night, the other symbol of beauty in day. The symbol of beauty at night was the stars. The one thing of beauty in the day was what? The tree, because the desert is nothing, and if he sees tree, he runs to it, because if there's a tree, the only way a tree can survive is if there's what? Water. So that's the biggest, most beautiful thing you'll find in his journey. He'll definitely going to make a stop by the tree, under the shade, and drink some water, right? The two things that he looks up to all the time, he looks for all the time, now he'll see them collapse. Those two things that he finds beauty in. النجم والشجر يسجدان. That's the next slide. Okay, that was kind of dull, but see if we can pull it up. Space bar. Okay, yeah, you can't see anything. Well, it's nighttime. What am I supposed to see? Right. Others say that this star and the sun, the star and the tree doing sajda also implies that all creation is completely in submission to Allah already. Everything else is in submission to Allah. Why are you refusing sajda? Why are you refusing to submit? And you have the Quran. You have the greatest creation. How can you refuse? Alusi said that when a star is shooting, it looks like it's doing sajda. Some interpreters look at it that way. Some looked at the tree, meaning when trees bear fruit, what happens to their branches? It's like they do sajda. Meaning the more blessings they have, the more sajda they make. Right? It's kind of cool. So when you enjoy blessings, what should you do? Say, learn from the tree. Learn from the tree and do sajda. SubhanAllah. وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. Let's go on. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا. The next slide, please. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا. The sky. He elevated it. There's a very particular kind of language. Those of you that are grammar geeks, this is called al-mashhul anhu. It's a unique rule of Arabic grammar. What it does is, when somebody speaks about an accomplishment and really wants you to pay attention to that accomplishment, they really want you to pay attention to that accomplishment, they mention their accomplishment twice. 57 free throws. 57. I shout. You mention it twice. You mention your accomplishment twice. You make reference to it another time. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا. The ha second time around. وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. The sky. He elevated it. You mentioned it twice. How amazing the sky is. Have you ever paid attention to the sky? We're going to learn something really particular about the sky. And Allah highlighting it twice like this, and then talking about prayer times, is Allah highlighting it twice like this is going to be important Because in the next ayat, twice over, we're going to see 2 times the reason. So he mentioned the sky twice here, and then there are 2 ayat coming that are as though 2 lessons that come out of this, the sky being mentioned twice. Before I go on, Allah is basically saying in simple language, pay extra attention to the sky. Pay extra attention to the sky. Why do Muslims pay attention to the sky? Why do we pay attention to the sky, guys? Salah times. Salah times. This is a Meccan surah. This is a Meccan surah. Let me ask you a hard question. If you see a Muslim on the street, how would you know they're Muslim? Maybe they're making salat. Maybe they have a beard. Maybe she's got a hijab on. Maybe they have a Quran in their hand. Maybe they look hungry and it's Ramadan. There are some things that make us look very, very Muslim. At airports and malls, at our workplace. There are some things that are clearly Muslim about us. It has to do with how we look, mostly. And this is the outwardly acts that we do. In Makkah, early Makkah, was official salat revealed yet? No. Was the beard revealed? No. Was hijab revealed? No. Was the prohibition of alcohol yet revealed? No. Fasting of Ramadan was revealed? No. These are the best Muslims. These are the best Muslims. What about them looks Muslim? All the things we think look like Islam haven't yet been revealed. None of them are there. Their Islam is a way of looking at the world. Their attitude, the way they carry themselves, their priorities in life. Not things on the outside, but things on the inside are built first for the Sahaba. All the things you and I think of when we think of a religious Muslim, none of them are there yet. None of those things are there yet. It's character is there. So it's something else entirely. I am saying we look at the sky and what do we think about? Is it Asr? Is it Lahar? Is it Maghrib? That's what we think about. This is Meccan Quran. Allah asked them to look at the sky. Is He asking them to think about Salah times or something else? It's going to be something else. What is that something else? He says, وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ, and He placed a scale, a balance. Look at the stars and how evenly they're placed. Look at the sun, it stays in its place and it comes out of its place. Look at the moon, it stays in its place. Now that we study the universe, we actually understand Mizan even better. Mizan means a weighing scale. Gravity, gravitational poles, galaxies, solar systems, planets orbiting. You know, all of these scales that Allah set in the entire universe. Why should we pay attention to those scales? Go to the next slide. You should look at the sky carefully so that, listen to this, so that you don't cheat in the scales. You don't violate the scales. Allah is saying when you pay attention to the sky, you will learn that Allah loves balance. And once you look at the sky and learn Allah loves balance, you will remember that Allah doesn't just love balance in the sky, He loves balance in your life too. The sky is reminding you to lead a balanced life, a fair life, a just life. The sky, according to the Quran, is a reminder of Allah's justice. SubhanAllah. Who looks at the sky and remembers to be fair? Isn't Allah changing the way we look at things? The way you look at something, we look at the sky every day. Who looks at the sky and says, man, I should come to work on time. I need to pay my employees on time. I haven't paid my debt and I keep dodging it. I need to make those payments. I need to finish the project I gave my word. I have to show up at this time I promised. I have to be fair and fulfill my obligations. I promised my mom I won't do this again. Wait, sky, that's a reminder. Yeah, I gotta fulfill my promise. That's what Allah did in this ayah. Look at the sky and remember that you have to be fair. You will not cheat people in scales. Let's talk about the cheating in scales, because it's so important that if you go in the next ayah, وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. 2 ayat are dedicated to the scales, just like the sky was mentioned twice. And you will establish the weight with scales, with proper scales, and you will not shortchange people in what you owe them. وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. You will not shortchange in the scales. You will not give people less than what they deserve. Let's talk about these people deserving and people not deserving a little bit. It's not just in business, guys. But it is in business too. You sign a contract, you're a consultant, you're an employee, you have a deadline to finish a project and you're goofing off at work. lot of you have jobs, maybe a lot of government jobs, the productivity is really low because there's no oversight, or there's a lot more job security generally, And what do people do? They're sitting at work just swatting flies or like checking out YouTube videos and updating Facebook status or whatever at the workplace, right? It's no big deal. My boss doesn't care. My boss isn't here. Nobody's watching. Allah is watching. Allah is watching. We have to be the most ethical employees, business people there are out there. A Muslim physician should be the most ethical physicians there are. They shouldn't shortchange their client base, their patients. Our accountants should be the most honest accountants. Our accountants are not the type of accountants that go to the customer and say, so what do you want to pay in taxes this year? This is what you owe in taxes. No, I want you to change the world, then you can't work with me because I just looked at the sky. I'm not doing that. The sky's still up there. That's enough reminder for me. It's like imagine a big giant sign in the sky. Don't cheat. Don't be unfair. Allah put that sign on the sky for you and me. That's what He did. It's not just about salat anymore, is it? Salat is just being fair to Allah. That's just doing your duty to Allah. The skies also do your duty to humanity. Let's talk about fairness a little closer to home. It's going to hurt some of you. I'm telling you ahead of time, but I'm sorry. It has to be done. I'll start with the man. Dads. We have so many responsibilities, guys. I have a responsibility to my parents. To my mother, separately. My father, separately. She needs my time. He needs my time and respect. I need to make time for my wife, just by herself. Not to ask her where the keys are, or what's for dinner, or did she write that check and send the bill in, but to actually make a human conversation with her. Not, how was your day? And she starts talking about you, like, wait, hold on, I'll be back. An actual conversation. Your children need your time from you. Individually, all 6 of them. You need to be able to talk to them while their voices not getting drowned out by their siblings. Those of you that have multiple kids, when you talk to one child, what does the other child feel like? What about me? Hey, look at me. Right here. You need to be able to make individual time for your kids. That's part of your fairness as a dad. You need to be able to make time for the masjid, to make salat in the masjid. That's a ni'mah of Allah that goes unappreciated. Very few of us make time for Isha. Isha should be a part of our life. And as our children grow older, we should just make that a part of their memory. We should come to the masjid for Isha. It should be a part of these masajid that are built. You can have all the complaints you want. These are huge gifts of Allah that will be asked about if we abandon them. We really will be. Allah has given us beautiful homes, amazing cars, and we're like, oh, it's like a 5-minute drive. Seriously? The stars don't hesitate in making sajda. The tree doesn't. Why do you? We need to make that time. Your profession needs time from you. Your friends need time from you. Your business dealings need time from you. And you and I have to balance all of those things together. You know what happens with most of us, men especially? We're messing up in one of those areas. And we mess up and we figure, I don't want to think about that, so I'm going to give a little extra time somewhere else. So there's a guy who doesn't get along with his wife. He's the guy that says, brother, I'll help set up chairs for the program. The program's in 2 days. Yeah, I'll stay here for 2 days setting up chairs. It's okay, I don't have to go home. Go home, brother. Be with your family. We have to give time to each of these things. Making time for your children to play with them. Sports. Taking them out on trips. That's part of you being a dad. Especially making time, guys, for your daughters. I talked about that last time I was here, I remember. Making time for your daughters. It's so important. It's so important. Because their self-esteem just hangs on us, on fathers. They think of their worth to themselves as how much father appreciates. How about dad said something nice about them. You'll go away for a little bit, they'll be writing cards and art, and they'll, how about I made this for you? And you look at it, that's nice. You have to sit and be amazed by it. Oh my God, that's amazing. You drew like a whole planet. No, that's Mama. Oh. Don't tell Mama. But anyhow, let's turn to the sisters a little bit. with the older sisters, the mothers, and the mother-in-laws. Let them live. Let them breathe. You're so unhappy all the time. You're so overwhelmed with what's not going right. How your son is being stolen by his wife, and she's turning him against you. And she writes different potions and spells every night, and puts those potions inside the salad before she feeds them to your son, so he won't call you. That's not why he didn't call you. He was sleeping on his face. That's why he didn't call you. You know? And then on the other side, the wife. Leave your mother-in-law alone. She's not the root of all evil. Yes, she is, brother. You don't know her. No, she's not. Leave her alone. Leave her, just don't. If you can't get along, at least be courteous to each other. At least be fair. If you can't go out of your way and be buddy-buddy, some of you are, and that's great. But if you can't be, at least be fair to each other. You have a mother too. You have a relationship with your mother. Why wouldn't you allow that for your husband? Why would you come between that? Get upset every time he goes to see his mother. You're going to her again? Yeah, go ahead, be with your mother. Okay, I will be with my mom. Cool. They don't understand sarcasm. They're like, okay, she's like, no, be with your mother. Fine, eat her food. Okay, cool. She gets it done anyway. And then the most amazing thing, this is the irony, guys. This is the irony. These ayat were revealed because the Quran calls for justice. And the Quraysh were unfair. Here we are, the Muslim community, we believe in the Quran, we believe in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we use the ayat of the Quran to further our own injustice. Parents being unfair, clearly being unfair. There is such a thing. Parents clearly being unfair, and if they're called on it, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Husband being clearly unfair. The wife says, that's not right, you can't do that. He says, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. This is the attitude we've taken. We use the religious text, we use the Quran, we use the ahadith to further our own personal agenda, our own greed, our own ego, our own selfishness. You don't think Allah's going to ask us about that? I told you when you honor something, you don't misuse it, right? When you honor something, you don't misuse it. We are amazing at misusing the teachings of our faith. Amazing. We use them for our own agendas. We're ready to serve the ahadith and serve the ayat that further our cause. Very quickly. It's amazing. We have to learn to be fair. We have to relearn these lessons. It's unfortunate that we find a very strange condition. This is one of the few comments. I'm spending time on this because this is a big deal. This is one of the things that's eating away at our community. Basic fairness and ethics. Basic fairness and ethics. Not even Islamic ethics. Universal ethics. These are universal ayat that are talking to all human beings. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ. He's not referring to some people. All people understand fairness. Okay? You know what's happening in our community? I tell you, and it hurts my heart a lot as I say this, what's happening to our community is what happened to Bani Israel. Bani Israel became very religious on the outside and extremely unfair and unethical on the inside. Their rituals, their prayers, their appearance, their concern with the halal and the haram was very strong. Very strong. To the point where things that weren't even haram, they made them haram out of caution. Very careful about that. But when it came to fairness among each other, they were ready to kill each other. They were ready to go at each other's throats. No ethics were involved. No code was involved. That's what's happened to much of the Muslim community. There's this outside appearance of being extremely religious, extremely observing, being a student of knowledge, studying more, learning more, memorizing more, and when it comes to basic ideas of fairness, basic ideas of dealing with people, look at what's happening in masjid boards. Look at what's happening within families, between husband and wife, between mother and child and father. The unfairness that's taking place, it's horrendous. The business practices between Muslims. You know how many places, subhanAllah, now I think the count is about 200, 230 or so masjids that I've seen in America. I've had talks with a lot of people. After a khutbah, after a lecture, just sit down and chat with some folks. How many people I've met that said, brother, I got into a business. There was his brother from the masjid. He was so religious. He was a hafiz. He was a qari. He was this. He was that. He was the other. And I thought, this is a good brother from the masjid. We should get into a business. We started the business. He ran away with my money. I hate religious people. That's what he told me. And that's not him. I've heard that many times. I'm not saying all religious people are evil. Or people that look religious run away. But you know what? We've done plenty of harm ourselves. And we have turned people away from deen. So you know what? Most Muslims are not religious, by the way. Most Muslims on this planet they're not going to be sitting in an ISB in the world. That's not going to happen. Okay? We are the weirdos of the Muslim population at this point. This is what we are. And most of them have a very skewed opinion of religious people. You know what it is? Religious people look all righteous, and on the inside they are just as corrupt and evil. They just use the religion to justify their unfairness. That's what their opinion. General Muslims have that opinion of Muslims that are religious. They look at somebody in hijab, somebody with a beard, that's the first thing that comes in their head. This guy wants everybody to think he's righteous, he's a con. She just wants everybody to think that she's religious, and she's just as arrogant, condescending, greedy, etc., as anybody else. We've done that because we emphasized, unfortunately, we emphasized one aspect of our religion and de-emphasized another. The Quran emphasized character first, and then the laws. I'm not saying we de-emphasize the laws. The laws never go away. But you can't compromise. Character is not the same as abiding by the law. The law of Sharia, the ahkam of fiqh, the halal and haram, that's all there. I'll give you a final example of that. How skewed our understandings become. Somebody will have, will argue with you tooth and nail. That restaurant serves haram food because they get it from this slaughterhouse. And I went to that slaughterhouse and the meat is cut this way, that way, and they have a tape player, an MP3 player. If they were tape player, it would have been halal. MP3 players are clearly haram. And you cannot eat at that restaurant. It's clearly haram. We have to protect our iman, etc., etc. And that's the same guy who didn't give his sister her shared inheritance. That's the same guy. What happened to Sharia then? Where did that go? That's the same guy who had no problem taking out a mortgage for his business. When it served a personal agenda, that was fine. But the food, food is something else. That's the same guy who has when it comes to, finances, when it comes to giving people their share, he still hasn't paid his mahar to his wife, 30 years after marriage. Still hasn't given her, but he's worried about halal food a lot. Get over it. How much more hypocritical can we get? Really, a look in the mirror is necessary for all of us. Really, all of us. Especially, I highlight before I end, the unfairness inside our families. How we are unfair to our children. We don't give them the time they deserve. Unfair to our wives. Unfair to our husbands. Unfair to our parents. Unfair to our, the elder, to our daughter-in-laws and our son-in-laws. How we're unfair to them. We put these weird expectations. I respect cultures. I personally think there are some things great about Indian culture, Pakistani culture, Bangladeshi culture, Egyptian culture, Moroccan culture. There are wonderful things in these cultures. But then there are some things in these cultures that are just bad. They're just bad. They're un-Islamic. And I'm not talking about weird practices of worship. I'm talking about things like your daughter-in-law comes to the house and she served the tea too quickly. Disrespectful. And now you're making a big fight out of it, and she hates us, and she's trying to tell us that we're not important because she just poured the tea just like that. Did you see how she poured the tea? I told you you shouldn't have married her. She poured the tea. Get over it. She came and she didn't even ask. Oh, this is a new one. This is a new one I've heard nowadays. I think this is particularly Pakistani. I don't know, might be some others too. You invited us, but it's the way you invited us. I could tell you didn't really invite us. Mom, come over. No, that's very Pakistani. नहीं ऐसे बुलाया, पता है क्या कर रहे हो? सब पता है. Just come over. Oh, if I was that important, why didn't you come and get me? Because you live next door. Just come over. It's your wife. She told you not to bring me. I told you come over. She called and said, why don't you come over? Why did she say the word why? Reading picking fights, nitpicking all the time, trying to find new ways to make conflict. And I personally, my theory, you don't have to agree with this, is my tafsir of the issue. My personal theory is we watch these soap operas from Pakistan and India that are over dramatic melodrama sadness, like, yeah? From today you are not my son. Those things, and our aunties, they memorize those lines and then they use them at home. It needs to stop. It just needs to stop. You're making yourself miserable, you're making your family miserable, and it's unfair. It's unfair. You're creating an environment of stress and sadness, and there's no way out of it. There's no way to make you happy. There's no way for you to be happy. What would make you happy? Nobody knows. It's like your hobby is to be upset. This is also a kind of unfairness. We have to get out of this zone. We have to leave those things behind. There are so many reasons to be happy. And I'm going to, I know I took a long time for this, but I felt it was important. That this stuff should be addressed. I tell you, we started with Rahmah, right? We haven't even gotten to the ayah about being grateful. But I'll say it ahead of time. People complain about their children. I don't know, I can't tell you how many parents have brought me their child, their teenage boy, brother, can you, this is my son, he's good, but he's very bad. Can you do something like Can you talk to him? And this kid is looking at me like, I wish he'd die. But he's put on the spot because I'm like, sorry dude, I didn't ask for this. It's not, But they'll do that, they'll put their children on the spot. And they'll complain about them. He's memorizing Quran, but he's not going very fast. He's memorizing Quran. Other kids are drug dealers. He's memorizing Quran, be grateful. He's not going as fast as you want, that's okay. My child is good, but he's not perfect. Oh, like you. This is what we do to our kids. And you know what? That same child, you're complaining about him all the time, you're talking down to him all the time. That same child, ma'adallah, gets in a car accident, gets sick, is in the hospital, all your complaints disappear. He was so perfect. He was so good. You don't know, he was the best son anybody could ever have. All your complaints disappear when the gift is taken a little. Why can't you appreciate it when you have it? Why do you have to complain like that all the time? SubhanAllah. This is what we've become, a culture of complaining all the time. It's like the more religious you get, the more you complain. The more religious we get, the more we're supposed to be grateful. Positive. Look at the upside in life. Of every one thing that goes wrong, there are a million things that are going right, and that's a gift from Allah. That's the way to look at life. But we do that to ourselves. This is a part of balance, folks. We have to lead balanced lives. We have to balance our careers, balance our religious learning, balance our family obligations, balance our own educational pursuits, balance the contributions we're going to make to the community. And so in these last 5 minutes, just the balance we have to have between ourselves and community. I personally, in my mind, have a formula. My formula in the United States is, for us, our families will only really survive if they're connected to the community. Truly survive when they're connected to the Muslim community. And to us, the word Muslim community is synonymous with masjid. They're one and the same thing. There's no difference between masjid and Muslim community. That's what it is to us. So our families need to have a relationship with the masjid. And the masjid will never survive unless its primary focus is to serve the family. They need each other. What happens a lot of times is the masjid serves the focus of the men, or just the women, or just a particular school of thought, or particular this or particular that. No, the priority needs to become family services. Programs for the entire family to enjoy. Family get-togethers. The masjid reinforces the family reinforces the masjid, they feed each other. If that becomes the top agenda in a masjid, amazing things happen. I traveled to maybe 70 different cities before I decided to move to Irving in Texas. And alhamdulillah, I had the choice to move wherever I wanted. Like I wanted to just pick the right place for the family. The thing that brought me to that community was the masjid. I go into the masjid, and what do I see? I see a large musalla, 500 people filling the musalla for Isha prayer. And in the back, they have a glass musalla just for dads that come to the masjid with their kids, so their kids can go crazy without disturbing other musallin. They're actually considerate to dads. Upstairs, they have two musallas. One for sisters with kids and one for sisters without kids. So the sisters with kids don't disturb the sisters without kids, and the room with the sisters with kids, the one wall is dry erase board so the kids can really go psycho. And it's all good. And women's activities, children's activities. I went there with, 4 years ago when I first went there, I was teaching an Arabic class. And I was about 100 people in my Arabic class, and the class is over 10 o'clock at night, Isha prayer, we go outside and there's 100 kids playing in the ball court, there's the 4 ball courts, there's uncles are playing a cricket match out there with stadium lights on, there's soccer going on, there's kids in the playground, there's aunties walking around with their children, kids riding bikes. It was like Eid. I was like, wow, that's what a masjid is supposed to be like. That's awesome. Families giving life to the masjid. And masjid giving life to family. That's what it's supposed to be. That's the vision for our masajid. That's the balance we're supposed to try and reach. All of us. And it's not gonna, don't say, our masjid should do more. No, you should come. Just come. That's all we need is people. That's all you need is people regularly contributing, regularly making salat at the masajid, as a family. Your kids will meet other kids that are at the masjid. They'll play with them. You'll meet other women. You'll have a little bit of socialization after salat. Brothers can meet others, every night. It's just this nice, welcome, warm feeling. We're coming closer to Allah and each other at the same time. What more beautiful thing can there be? I hope that we're all over the country, we're able to reach that kind of balance. May Allah protect our masajid and our communities. Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. Okay. I'm going to give you guys your break now. I'm really scared because we're behind schedule, but inshallah we'll finish on time. I'm going to give you guys a break at 1:45 exactly. We'll be back. Even if none of you are back, I'll start talking again, inshallah ta'ala, at 1:45. And for now, I'll give you, was it sister's turn or brother's turn? I forgot. Sister's turn? Okay, so I'll give you guys 10 minutes of QA before I go off and disappear also.